Hello again. In our last lecture, we started talking about availability. Remember, that's one of the big three: confidentiality, integrity, availability. Let's talk a little bit more about that today. Okay, so typically an availability attack, or denial of service attack as they're commonly called, means that you're in a distributed environment and parties out there on the internet or in the world are bombarding you or sending packets to you using the standard packet switching mechanisms of the internet. So the idea is it would be ideal if you could figure out which were bad packets and which were good packets and block the bad packets and let the good packets through. That's pretty hard. You might install something called a packet sniffer or a filter to try to detect which packets may be malicious, but often there's no way to indicate that. You might look at the address where the packet's coming from, but that may be forged, so you may not know. And so this is a really hard problem, and that's why this problem of trying to filter out packets is almost intractable. Okay, so nevertheless, a good firewall is still a very important thing to have. So a good firewall, has a set of rules and tries to determine what packets may give you trouble and what won't. And it's not going to be foolproof, but it may be pretty good. And so, you can typically adjust the parameters on your firewall to make it more aggressive about filtering things out or less aggressive, depending upon your scenario. You have two different really situations which we might want to consider. An intrusion detection system is one that looks at behavior within your system and tries to see if any anomalous activity is going on. So that is, you're trying to detect whether an attack has occurred and in fact has gotten past your perimeter defenses like your firewall. And this is pretty hard because often it's difficult to distinguish between anomalous behavior and maybe behavior which is perfectly legitimate but may just be, a high volume of traffic or something of that nature. An intrusion prevention system attempts to strengthen your perimeter defense so the packets don't get in at all. So an intrusion detection system assumes that the attack is already inside the walls and something bad may be happening. An intrusion prevention system tries to make sure that the attack never gets in at all. And both of those are very difficult to implement in general. Okay, so assuming that we've got a distributed denial of service attack going on and you're being flooded, for example, with malicious packets, how might you go about dealing with this, assuming that you can't block them at the firewall? Well, people have suggested various ways of doing this. You might over-provision your network, meaning that you have so many servers that, even if somebody sends you a bunch of bad traffic, that they're not going to take you down. The problem with that, of course, is that it's expensive. The more servers you have, the more money that's going to cost you. And, in these botnets that people build these days with thousands or millions of computers, you're just not going to win at that game. So that's not going to work. Another way is to try to, as we've said, filter the attack packets. But that's difficult. In general, you can't know whether an arbitrary packet has malicious content or not. You might try slowing down the processing, but that, of course, that disadvantages everyone. Disadvantages your legitimate clients, but the idea is that it also disadvantages those who are sending you malicious packets, and since they may be sending you more packets, that may disadvantage them even more. And finally, there's a solution which is called the speak-up solution. This is due to Mike Wallfish, who is a professor in our department. And what Mike suggested is a little bit counterintuitive. What he said is if you see that you're under attack, then you request everybody that's sending you packets to send you more packets. That sounds a little counterintuitive, and it is, but Mike's idea is this. The people who are sending you malicious packets from botnets are probably maxed out. They probably can't send you any more packets, but your legitimate customers can ramp up their activity, send you additional packets, and thereby the percentage of legitimate traffic within the traffic that you've got coming across your firewall is improved or increased with respect to the malicious traffic. and that helps in some cases. Okay, so what have we said? We said in general that availability attacks or denial of service attacks are pretty difficult to counter, and it's very hard to distinguish in many cases illegitimate traffic from legitimate traffic. Various solutions have been proposed to block incoming traffic or to detect anomalous activity, but in general it's pretty hard to do. Thanks.